The war that we don't talk about that much, but the war that was more dreaded to Alexander than the war of Hydaspes. The war that actually shaken the spirits of the Greek and the Roman soldiers. The war that was fought in the banks of Jhelum that we call to be the war of Sanghala, the bank of chenab, was dreaded by the bloods of the Greek invading soldiers. It is very unusual on their part to mention that 1,200 soldiers were injured and around 300 soldiers had died in that battle. It was a very unusual fact as for the Greek sources goes on, because they don't mention about the losses. This was the first time that they mention about so much of loss. And who were the fighters? They were the Aratas. Greeks under the leadership of Alexander has to face Kathi, Oxydracae and Mali's combined force under the leadership of Rudradasa, the leader of the Oxydracae. Oxydracae, who is mentioned as Audambaras by Varahamihira. The Kathi of the Coinages as mentioned by Varahamihira in Brihad Samhita. And then comes the Mali. It is very interesting to note that Oxydracae or the Audambaras has a relation with our great Bengal presidency's king of Kalinga. After Rudradasa, the king who became of the Audambaras was Dhara Ghosh, whose coin we have received. Dhara Ghosh was son of Ghosha or Kaksivañt. Kaksivañt was the son of Drigatamas. After the queen of Kalinga and the Raja of Kalinga had no son for several years, Raja of Kalinga called Drigatamas asked her queen to beget sons from him. 5 sons were born, of which Kaksivañt was one of them. He was named Kaksivañt, who by affiliation of Kalinga was the Kshatriya, and as being Drigatamas' son, he was a Brahmin. From him was born the Ghosha, the princess Ghosha. The Ghosha then worshipped Ashwini Kumars to get over her illness, and then she got married to the prince of the Shalva. And their son took the name of the Ghosh, and that's from the Ghosha Janapadas, who later had also nuptial relationship with multiple Aratha kingdoms like the Audambaras. After which we see the few kings of the Audambara who uses the title of the Ghosha. Thus we find the coin of the first Audambara kings to be Dhara Ghosha, thus showing a nuptial relationship with the eastern Janapadas with the western Janapadas, and proving and showing the mutual transaction of this Janapada. This is a very important conjunction showing that India was not separated or divided but was united even during the times of the Janapadas. Thus, we get the first Audambara king's in coin with the name of the Dhara Ghosha. From Kaksivañt born daughter Ghosha, who was probably married to Rudradasa, and whose son was Dhara Ghosh. This one we get from the Rigvedic sources of the Vashya of Sayanacharya.Nirukta 610, and the story has been mentioned in Mandala 1, Anuvakta 18, Sukta 125 of Rigveda. After Dhara Ghosha in Audambara Kingdom, Bhanumitra and Virayashya has followed the Audambara's lineage, to whose coins we get. The coins were very special and unique. This clearly shows that the Audambaras were the great worshippers of Shiva and Kartik, because in most of their coins we get a depiction of Kartik or Shiva. Like in the coins of Dhara Ghosha, we get depiction of Shiva carrying a trident and standing beside the great Audambara tree, from which this tribe got its name. But this doesn't end out here. It is not the only incidents where we get incidents from those northeastern kingdoms having relation with Kalinga. Like the brother of Porus, according to Diodorus, they ran back to the Gangardamas, king of the Gangarda, which is the king that was present in Kalinga dynasty. It is very interesting to note that in Varahamihira's Kurma Bibhag, where he explains the whole of the earth with Madhyadesa as Varatadesha, then explaining Janapadas, there we get in the northeastern Janapadas, where the war of Sanghala has taken place, the mention of the Ghosha Janapada, which is followed by the Kunida, as I mentioned earlier, the Kathia or the Kunida that we were talking about, and the Mali. This shows that probably the Audambaras, as we know, might be the Ghosha Janapada that we are talking about. There was another Janapada by the same name, Ghosha, in the central part. It is the present day of the locations of parts of Bihar, Odisha, Bengal, and parts of the UP, which is formed at the juncture of the Revati, Ashwini, Kritika, Varani, and Mrigshira nakshatra. And so this clearly shows the link of these two Janapadas from a very long time. So that's why it is very unique and interesting to note that only one Janapada has been named twice, that is the Ghoshas. And probably this is the link, the Dhara Ghosha is the link between these two Janapadas that we find. One coming from the central Madhya Desa, the Bengal, Odisha part, and the other in the northeast, because we are finding a clear distinct marriage of Kalingas with the Audambaras. This part, the sources that I have used in this is the Varahamihira Brihad Samhita, from where I talked about the Kurma Vibhag and the Janapadas that we talk about the Ghoshas. The other is the Rigveda's Mandala, as I have mentioned earlier, and Sayanacharya's Vashya on it. Then I have used the Diodorus Plinius details about Alexander Omnibus. Then I have also taken help of the coinage, Numismatic Chronicles of Cunningham, where the coins of the Dhara Ghosha, Bhanumitra and Veerayasya and King Brishni we find, who were the kings of the Audambaras. This was my brief take on the war of Sanghala and its relation with the Audambaras and its roots and its few unimportant and unhindered points that is very interesting yet not exploded. But we find a clear linkage that the Ghoshas were Janapadas that was coming from multiple areas, and they are considered to be Kshatriyas by the source of the Kaksivañt. Even Audambaras has also been mentioned as the Rajanyas by the great grammarian Panini. So this is my brief take on Audambaras and the Battle of Sanghala. The battle we don't talk about, but the battle that broke in the Alexander's heart.